The subject of today's video was a crime boss and gang leader that terrorized the streets of Los Angeles in the 1970s, leading to the deaths of multiple people. He was a bodybuilder, and he used his massive frame to carry out evil. He even helped create one of the most notorious street gangs still relevant to this day. He also was one of the last men to be executed on death row in the state of California. The subject of today's video is none other than Stanley Tookie Williams, and today we're going to be telling his story. But before we get into the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Stanley Williams was born in New Orleans, Louisiana on December 29, 1953, and was named after his father and grandfather. However, he didn't have a relationship with them, and he was raised by his mother from a very early age. Wanting to give her son a better chance to break free from the difficulties of living in extreme poverty in Louisiana, his mother moved the family to South Central Los Angeles when he was 6. Stanley had a rough upbringing as a kid and was surrounded by negative influences. Stanley stated in an interview that as a child, he would hang out in abandoned houses and vacant lots around the neighborhoods in South Central, where he would watch adults get drunk, abuse drugs, gamble, and engage in dogfights. After the adults finished the dogfighting, they would make the children fight each other. He began to participate in these street fights regularly as a child, where adults would bet on him and give him part of the proceeds for winning his fights. Stanley would continue to fight as he grew older. In fact, he was expelled from George Washington Preparatory High School and was blackballed by several other high schools for fighting, and eventually began doing stints in juvenile hall. While in juvenile hall, Stanley developed an interest in weightlifting. He went on a bodybuilding regimen which saw him bulk up to over 300 pounds, with biceps measuring in at 22 inches. Shortly after being released from juvie, Stanley met someone named Raymond Washington. Raymond was interested in meeting Stanley after hearing about his toughness and his willingness to fight members of larger, more established street gangs. Washington was from South Central's east side, where he was a prominent gangster, similar to Stanley, and proposed they use their influence in their respective regions to form the larger Crips street gang. The purpose for creating the gang initially was to eliminate all street gangs and to create a Bull Force neighborhood watch in South Central. Stanley claimed that he founded the Crips with the intention of creating a force powerful enough to protect local black people from racism, corruption, and brutality at the hands of the police. At the time of the Crips' initial formation, there were only 3 Crip sets: Washington's East Side Crips, Stanley's West Side Crips, and the Compton Crips. Stanley formed the West Side Crips using his own influence, having befriended so many clique leaders and street thugs on the West Side. The Crips went on an aggressive and violent recruitment campaign throughout the black ghettos of Los Angeles, where they challenged the leaders of other gangs to one-on-one street fights. This process resulted in most gangs agreeing to join the Crips, and they were converted from smaller, independent cliques into subgroups of a gang within the larger gang. The Crips quickly became the biggest street gang in South Central by both numbers and territory. However, numerous gangs still resisted losing their independence. These holdout gangs formed a similar alliance to combat the Crips' influence, branding themselves as the Bloods, and would become the Crips' fiercest rivals. Stanley became the archetype of the new wave of Los Angeles gang members that would engage in random acts of violence against rival gang members and innocent people alike. Stanley and his best friend, Curtis Buddha Morrow, would noticeably participate in these activities, striking fear into both street criminals and the residents of South Central. Stanley's violent acts became legendary in southern Los Angeles' criminal underworld, as on numerous occasions, criminal charges brought against him ended in disarray, and prosecutors were unable to convict him due to lack of evidence. Soon after the foundation of the Crips, other leaders were either murdered or incarcerated, and Stanley became regarded as the de facto leader. In 1974, Raymond Washington was arrested for second-degree robbery and served 5 years in prison in Tracy. Raymond was soon murdered after his release from prison. On February 23, 1973, Curtis Buddha Morrow was shot to death in South Central following a petty argument. In 1976, Stanley was wounded in a drive-by shooting while sitting on the porch of his house in Compton. The shooting was committed by members of the Bloods, who shot Stanley from their car as he was letting his dog out for a walk in the evening. Attempting to avoid getting hit, Stanley dove to the ground from the porch but was shot in both of his legs. He was told by doctors that he would never walk again, but after a nearly year-long process of physical rehabilitation and an intense workout regimen, he ultimately regained his ability to walk. After the shooting, Stanley redeveloped a substance abuse problem when he began smoking PCP. After this, his personal life began to unravel. His grandmother died in 1976, he lost his counseling job in 1977 after being implicated in a robbery. Eventually, his gangster lifestyle was beginning to take a mental toll on him, which included a brief stay in the psychiatric ward of a hospital after Stanley experienced a bad trip while high on PCP. With each of these setbacks, he increasingly found himself using PCP and supported his drug habit by intimidating and robbing drug dealers in South Central. Under the influence of PCP, Stanley would go on a killing spree. On February 28, 1979, Stanley, armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, and 3 other individuals drove to a convenience store with the intention of robbing the clerk. According to later police reports, 26-year-old store clerk Albert Owens was walked into a back room by Stanley while the other members of the gang took money from the register. Stanley then shot out the security monitor in the back room and killed Owens with 2 execution-style shots to the back. On March 11, 1979, Stanley went to the Brookhaven Motel, which is owned by 76-year-old Yan Yi Yang and his wife, 63-year-old Shai Shea Si Yang, their daughter, 43-year-old Yu Chin Yang Lin. Stanley entered the motel lobby and then broke down the door that led to the private office. Inside the office, Stanley shot and killed Yan Yi, Shai Shea, and Yu Chin, after which he emptied the cash register and fled the scene. The forensic pathologist testified that Yan Yi Yang suffered 2 close-range shotgun wounds, one to his left arm and abdomen, and one to the lower left chest. Shai Shea also received 2 close-range wounds, one to the tailbone and the other to the front of the abdomen, entering at the navel. Yu Chin Yang Lin was shot once in the upper left face area at a distance of a few feet. In 1981, Stanley was tried and convicted in Los Angeles Superior Court of all 4 murders plus 2 counts of robbery and was sentenced to death. On April 20th of that year, he was sent to San Quentin State Prison to sit on death row. He did not adjust well to prison life, and by the mid-1980s, he was given a 6.5-year stay in solitary confinement for multiple assaults on guards and fellow inmates. After 2 years in solitary, Stanley started to examine his life choices and repented for his past actions. He attributed his transformation to God and began speaking out against gang violence. He filed for a federal appeal in 1988 and told court officials he was a changed man, but his appeal was denied. In 1994, he was released from solitary. With his new mindset, he began writing a book, and in 1996, with the help of co-author Barbara Cotman Becknell, he published the first of 8, Tookie Speaks Out Against Gang Violence, anti-gang books aimed at children. The next year, Williams wrote an apology for his role in creating the Crips. I am no longer part of the problem. Thanks to the Almighty, I am no longer sleepwalking through life, he wrote. With his death sentence close at hand, Stanley petitioned again for clemency in 2005. California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger met with him to help decide whether the sentence should be commuted to life in prison. Stanley's defenders and prosecutors each had 30 minutes to plead their case to the governor. After the meeting, Schwarzenegger denied Stanley's bid for clemency, citing the forensic evidence linking him to the killings of 1979. Despite protests from the NAACP and various supporters who turned out to fight the decision, ultimately, he was executed by lethal injection on December 13, 2005 at San Quentin State Prison. Let me know what you guys think of this situation in the comment section, and please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.